And thanks for being with Morning Live. President Cyril Ramaphosa has said that he will step down should he be charged with corruption. And this in response to former Eskom CEO Brian Molefe, who implicated Ramaphosa at the State Capture Commission of Inquiry last week. Now, Molefe said that Ramaphosa was involved in decisions that furthered his own business interests as chairperson and a shareholder during mining company Glencore's acquisition of Optimum coal mine in 2012. Now, according to Molefe, Ramaphosa stood to benefit personally when Optimum renegotiated its contract with Eskom to hike the cost of coal, which was of a detriment to the power utility. And Ramaphosa's presidency is faced with numerous challenges, including criticism in his dealings with corruption and all of that, and the CR17 campaign. Quite a bit to talk about. Political analyst Professor Tinyiko Maluleke joins us now to discuss all of this further. Professor, good morning, and thanks for being with us on this Monday morning.
Good morning, Sakina, and good morning to the viewers.
Let's start at the Commission of Inquiry into allegations of state capture on Friday, and Mr. Brian Molefe's testimony there. What did you make of all of that?
Well, he was certainly not holding anything back, and he spent quite a bit of time focusing on these allegations around the president and his role in the company that Molefe feels put him into conflict of interest, if anything. And he went on to speak about what he thinks Ramaphosa did further once he was deputy president. So these are quite serious allegations that are being made. It doesn't matter that Molefe himself does not have a great record of telling the truth. If the State Capture Commission report of the former public protector is anything to go by, but as they say in isiZulu, khuluma iqiniso njengomuntu ofayo. There is nothing like someone whose life is at stake to make a person tell the truth. So we will have to hear how the president answers to these allegations.
And what is a bit of an immediate response, because incidentally, the president himself was on a radio platform talking, I believe, about vaccines, wasn't able to listen to that. But addressing the media, President disputed Molefe's assertions that he was sold those shares and that he was made the chairperson of Glencore because of his political clout to advance Glencore's interests. Why do you think, because this is not the first time that these sort of allegations have been leveled against President Cyril Ramaphosa, why do you think these sort of allegations tend to follow him around? Some have written extensively about his relationship with Clive Mennell, for example, who involved him in the Urban Foundation project, invited him onto its board, and was later then instrumental in the formation of NUM, for example.
Yeah, look, I don't think that many of the allegations, at least the factual aspects of the allegations, can be disputed. So, for example, was he or was he not a chairperson of Glencore? Did he or did he not buy shares at Glencore? Those kinds of things can easily be verified. The question is the link that the likes of Molefe are making between him being on the board, buying shares, and influencing things in favor of those companies or himself over against the national interest. That is a very serious allegation, and that one is an allegation that needs to be proven beyond merely being asserted. And that is an allegation that needs the president to dispute blow by blow, not merely to deny and say it's not true. He would have to say, this is exactly what happened, not that. This is when I was here and when I was not there. You know, that kind of response is still awaited. from the president. But I think even Brian Molefe was not able to necessarily make the links. For example, to say the president is responsible for load shedding is one assertion, but how then do you provide proof of that assertion is quite another. So I'm looking forward to the day when the president appears before the Zondo Commission to hear how he responds blow by blow, fact by fact, issue by issue, beyond the kinds of denials that we have heard from him so far.
And then, of course, there's the issue of good corporate governance. And Brian Molefe makes the point about a cooling down period, a cooling off period, as it were. Talks about at the time during which the president may have gotten rid of his interests, but then steps immediately into a role that would still have him wielding quite a bit of power over this entity or the space in which this entity operates that he has just come out of. What do you make of that?
That, again, is something to which the president has to respond. It's a serious allegation of neglect of conflict of interest protocols. And it's not good enough simply to say the president is not the only one to have done it, even at that time. It's again something that he would need to respond to. Whether or not, in the course of things, he should have thought about the fact that I'm coming out of this and getting into this, and that there was a relationship between that company and Eskom. And again, the president, when the president appointed him onto the war room responsibility, what conversation he and the president had about this very possibility of conflict of interest. So again, it's something that I think it would help South Africans if the president were to take them into their confidence and speak to that issue and respond fully to it so as to lay it to rest.
So if Brian Molefe is correct when he talks about the war room and saying that basically, for all intents and purposes, you had a parallel board that was running. So you had the board at Eskom, and then you had another board that was being run by this war room. And if you look at how things have unfolded at Eskom and how that entity has been bedeviled, who should be held accountable?
Well, I don't know that we should tag along with all the rich allegations that Brian Molefe is making regarding the war room. I mean, the war room was not the board of Eskom, and I think one would have to prove the extent to which the war room was a de facto board, as Brian alleges. The war room was set up not by Cyril Ramaphosa, but by the former president in light of the energy crisis that the country was facing. And I would think that in setting up such a structure, consideration would have been made as to how that structure liaises with the board of Eskom. So it was not created by Cyril for his own benefit. It certainly was created by the former president. Whether or not Cyril Ramaphosa benefited from it or abused it is something that needs to be proven and not merely asserted.
Cyril Ramaphosa aside, as you say, it needs to be established. The veracity of that allegation has to be established. And should it be found that, in fact, Eskom did have two parallel boards at that given time, should there not be greater culpability assigned for basically the falling apart of the state entity?
Well, yeah, ultimately there should be responsibility and accountability from the up to the office of the president at that time to the creation of this war room and its role and proof of whether it worked or did not work. I don't think we can trust only Brian Molefe to give us an opinion on the efficacy of the war room and its role. I think we'll need more opinions because all of the above, Eskom management, war room participants, the presidency at that time, were all actively participating in processes designed to try and help Eskom. And I think we should establish how far the culpability goes. And we can't just look at one corner to establish that.
But then shouldn't we also be very careful as to not listen to only another corner, as it were, Professor, because this is, I think what your colleague and friend Aubrey Machitli was talking about in talking about angels with horns and devils with wings. And this is where we should be very careful as a society not to be hoodwinked one way or another.
That's precisely my point. My point is that culpability rests on all of the potential culpability, that is, rests on all of the participants, and we should keep our wits with us and not allow one or the other to give us only one piece, which is not proven, which is not disputed, whether it comes from the Ramaphosa corner or the Brian Molefe corner or the Glencore corner or the former president's corner. We need all of these sides on the table so that we are able to evaluate and assess what actually happened, and to take that and triangulate it with what is happening at Eskom now or what is not happening at Eskom now.
So how does this, Professor, complicate things further within the ANC? Because if the president, as he says, will step down if he is, accused of corruption, how does that then change the dynamic within the African National Congress, given that it is already a very divided party?
Well, that would be a very precarious situation for the ANC and for the country as such, because if the ANC president steps aside because he has been formally charged with corruption, what happens to the president of the state during that time? Do we also go hunting and searching for a state president at that time? So it's a little bit complicated. But I assume that the president is saying that because he is confident that he has no case to answer. But the proof of that must come from him, and not, once again, he mustn't just assert. He has to prove that he has no case to answer, and therefore he will not need to step aside. But if he were to step aside, it would really be precarious for the ANC and for the country.
So to what extent does this weaken the president from acting against members of his own party, do you believe, Professor?
I hope it doesn't. I hope that he continues on the promises he made in 2017, 2018 to fight corruption. And I hope that he does unto himself that which he asks of others, which is what he is saying when he says, I will step aside once charged. I hope that he will stay the course, fight this fight, and be candid enough to step aside if he is indeed charged.
So just in closing, the CR17 donations for his ANC presidential election campaign. What's your view on President Ramaphosa approaching the Constitutional Court to interpret the law with regard to the protection of his donors during that CR17 campaign?
Yeah, again, it's a very complicated affair. I don't know that it is so much about the donors as it is about him from a citizen's point of view. The South African citizen, I think, would be interested to know if the path to the presidency that has been followed by the current president has been ethical or unethical. And I hope that the Constitutional Court will look into all that, because he was already, as we know, deputy president of the country at the time, and look at the whole question of rules regarding political party donations and fundraising, an issue that the ANC itself needs to look at. But I think we need the intervention of the Constitutional Court to tell us how to move forward as far as that is concerned. So I hope that this will benefit not just the donors of the president, but it will benefit the citizens of the country who are keen to know whether an ethical or an unethical path was followed by the current president in his pursuit for the high office.
Professor, thank you so much for your time. Political analyst Professor Tinyiko Maluleke talking to us about the challenges faced by President Cyril Ramaphosa following allegations by former Eskom CEO Brian Molefe at the Commission of Inquiry into State Capture. With that, we're going to take a quick break and then